On a vibrational frequency, pink has been gravitated and associated with the sacred feminine energy. It's a feminine color. So empathy, the caring, nurturing trait, is a feminine trait. The other part of pink is that psychologically it's a color that pacifies, and they've done strange experiments in prisons using the color pink on prison walls. What they found is that inmates became less aggressive, but it had to be the right shade of pink. If it was the wrong shade of pink, the inmates would become more aggressive. They've also used a strategy in sports where they've painted the opponent's away dressing room pink because it softens them. So really the message is about a soft, nurturing, caring energy. I wear the pink as a statement that I'm a man in all the traditional concepts of a man, but I'm in touch with my feminine energy, and I try to combine the two to optimize my humanness. I realized that as a man wearing pink and making this pink statement, it was sticky.
Hello and welcome to Elevated Conversations. Vital Germaine is an author of 7 books. He works as a conference speaker, as a coach, and a guide to thousands of people. And his story from foster home to the circus to now the big stage and becoming an expert in empathy and empaths as a style of person and personality trait is truly inspiring and very interesting. So we really hope you enjoy this elevator conversation with Vital Germaine. Well, Vital, welcome to Elevator Conversations. This is an elevator conversation that Roxy and I are really looking forward to having. So welcome. Thanks for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. Honored to be here. Thank you.
Your bio, your history is such an amazing story. I had a look at a couple of YouTubes as well, and I love how you delve into some of the theory and science behind a lot of this stuff, but then you dabble in the woo-woo. And Vital, I've got to let you know, we're very woo-woo around here. So we're going to have a lot of fun today in our chats.
Good.
There is this idea that often an old soul, when they're choosing their soul contract, chooses a particularly challenging soul contract in order to grow and expand. And of course, when you're outside of the pain of 3D, you have all these elevated ideas of, oh, I'll get to learn so much and expand through my pain and my disappointment. And then you get born and you're 3D and you forget that you're a wise old soul. And you kind of might actually think that all of this life sometimes sucks a little bit. But perhaps you could share with us a little about your journey and how that has kind of gone now in reflection. Like, what are some of your big learning lessons, some realizations, and of course now how you inspire and help so many people. We just loved reading about your story.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you didn't hesitate to dive straight into the woo-woo end of things about the soul contracts. I have a theory that probably aligns somewhat with what you're suggesting. So I'm going to focus on the concept of the empath, which is kind of my main talking point, the empath, but also just people in general. I think our soul is given a mission, a certain DNA, a programming. You are now going to experience this. In order for you to experience this, you're going to need these type of attributes. And so as an empath, highly sensitive people, you're going to experience pain and suffering. And the reason why you're going to experience pain and suffering is because your light is destined to help people heal. So the only way you can understand pain is you have to experience it, which is kind of like a messed up contract, because we can argue, depending on how far down the woo rabbit hole you want to go, do we actually make the agreement? Do we say, hey, I want that one, or is it given to us and, hey, this is your mission, you know, this will self-destruct in 5 minutes if you accept. It can be that too. So I like to believe that I made a subconscious choice and I've leveraged, this is the other part, you've been given a contract. Now what do you do with the contract? Do you leverage it? Do you play victim? Do you go back and forth between the two?
Which is all the free will, right? Free will.
That is the free will. And I as much as I promote empathy, which is about kindness and goodness, I am an advocate for free will, which is going to sound a little bit of a sort of an oxymoron. You have the will to express your anger and your hate. I'm okay with that. But that doesn't mean there aren't consequences.
Hmm.
You can insult me all you like, and if you push the button too far, I am capable, despite being an empath, I will get medieval too. Let's put the gloves on and get in the boxing ring. But I'm okay with the right that each human being has the free will to express their joy, their sorrow, their pain, their experiences.
Hmm. We have a lot of people as well, like talking about being empathic and, oh, I'm so sensitive to the energies, going to the shops. And through my experience, I worked out that I'm very sensitive as well. And most of us light workers are. And that level of sensitivity when I was in the trenches, there's a phase of, in the trenches, having dark nights of the soul, having panic attacks in shopping centers and all sorts of things like that. Very empathic to energies. And then once I got out of that, I don't feel like as I am as empathic anymore. I'm more in tune, perhaps. Maybe it's just a different perspective of saying it and language. So do you feel that you continue to be empathic all the way through, or is it a trigger point into coming into your vortex for more deeper healing? Perhaps there's a shadow that's being triggered for a feeling deeper in our own journey, in our own spiritual, emotional clearing journey?
It's a very valid question and perspective to think about and analyze. Off the top of my head, my immediate response is I don't think you've become less empathic. What I think you've learned to do, even if it's on a subconscious level, you've learned to manage the external world. Your internal world can now process that information, that energy, to a point where it's maybe not as overwhelming. You're still feeling it. You're still conscious and aware of it. You've now been able to turn down the volume, so to speak. The music is still playing. You've now been able to turn down the volume. Depending on how evolved you are in that sensitivity, you can actually now also start selecting the type of songs you want to hear. Right? So certain frequencies and certain energies, I have now learned, whether you want to say I'm putting up a shield, a barrier, whatever that protective cloak is that I'm using, I'm determining that frequency is harmful to me, therefore I'm going to negate it. That doesn't mean I'm less empathic. I'm still conscious that it's there. It's no longer having a grasp or a negative impact on my energy, my soul, my spirit. I think that's my take on it.
Yeah, so it's like, I'll use my example because it's a kind of good one and I'm sure people can relate to it. But yeah, I'd go to the shops and I'd have these anxiety, this wave of panic and anxiety coming over me. And it was almost like when the wound was really open in those deep trench days. And I'm sure now I can go to the shops and I'm aware on a higher kind of frequency, but that shadow has been healed. And it's almost like the instrument has been fine-tuned and it's playing now, where it's before it was a bit wonky and unsteady in its elevation and its healing journey. So I love that you can kind of talk to that.
I totally agree. I want to add a layer to this. I try to be careful of using the word. For me, this is a personal choice now. We're bombarded with the phrase now, a trigger, right? So somebody who experiences anxiety in loud environments, oh, it's a trigger. No, it's not a trigger. I am highly sensitive to, for example, if it's too bright in here, can we please turn down the light? There was no trigger. It's just too bright for me. And so sometimes your anxiety is not that you've got this emotional trigger from a childhood wound. It's just that it's too loud, it's too bright. Can we please just shh? No trigger. It's just you as a human being embracing, this is how I respond to the external world. No trigger. So for me, that's like, really.
Yeah, so it's like the senses are, a bit more higher than another person's sensories. Yeah.
I love that, though.
And that doesn't mean that some people are triggered. I just don't want to make it a blanket statement that you
have
this anxiety because you're triggered.
Of course, yeah. Beautiful. Better way to put it.
Well, I love that, though, because then that doesn't infer that there's something wrong with the person. So you might be going to the shopping center and there's a lot of chaotic energy and people are pushy and loud and demanding, and you've just come out of a really chilled, peaceful state, and you're not particularly pleasant in that hectic environment. It's not actually that you've got an emotional wound and that it all started when you were 3 at the shopping center, which it could be, but it probably is not. It's just affecting your vibe and your flow. I think that's a really good point to put on things, because I've always really resonated with the saying, when we're doing this work, we be the explorer, not the archaeologist.
Oh, I like that. Now I'm going to ask you, can you elaborate on that? Because I might have to steal this. I love it.
So if we are in a state, a situation where we have a response, let's call it a response. The lights are bright. There's a lot of chaotic energy. When we're more self-aware, when we're the observer, when we have that observer and we can feel into the presence, we can begin to feel into the emotion in behind what we're feeling in that particular state. And rather than sit there going, shopping centers, people, noise, now when have I been in a shopping center before? You know, did mum ever leave me alone? Did dad ever lose me at the shopping center? Or can you just go, oh no, hang on a sec. I'm feeling like not particularly comfortable right now in this grocery store. But, I think it was just the fact that, right, I was listening to a bit of Deepak in the car on the way to the thing, and I was all chilling about love and vibes, and now I'm in here, right? And they're telling me to put my mask on and stay back away from the counter or whatever the energy could be. It's Christmas and everyone's like, in that vibe. And you go, oh, and you've observed and explored your way through it rather than overthinking. You know how we all love to overthink, overanalyze. And I really love that saying. Could you understand
I love it. I'm going to adopt it. I'm going to steal like an artist. There's a great book by Austin Klingon, and it's called Steal Like an Artist, and it's about inspiration. But I'm blatantly going to steal this quote because I think it's just spot on. So thank you for the gift.
Well, we'll just share the light together, brother. That's what it's great. So this idea of the empath, like so many people have this, like, let's call it empathetic streak where, they almost walk into a room and know something's gone wrong and they haven't spoken to a person, they haven't heard, they just feel the energy. Or they're talking to someone and they can feel the energy coming, from a situation with the person. But often what comes with empaths is they then notice that often strangers or people they don't know too well start to tell them their life story and of something that they're working through and etc. And it could be that they've got a very peaceful and quiet vibe, but I have been fascinated in the idea that perhaps they're also a bright soul, and it's like the higher self of this person sees a light or senses some sort of light emanating from the empath and feels very comfortable to share with them a challenge or an issue, hoping to get some sort of guidance or assistance. What would your thoughts be on that, Vital?
That's exactly what happens. And I want to go back to energy. We're going to now get science and woo-woo to collide. Okay, so
yes,
energy is woo-woo. But then if you think of Nikola Tesla, he says, think of the universe in terms of energy. Everything is energy, right? And so to your point, the energy of the empath is kind, caring, nurturing, non-judgmental, non-condemning. So by default of that energy and our intention, people don't know why, but they feel safe, right? So that's why people are willing to come and share, because they know, hey, I'm going to tell you part of my darkness, and I know you're not going to condemn me and you're not going to judge me. And that provides them a place of safety. And every single human being, one of the things we crave the most is connection. How do you connect deeply with somebody? There's trust, there's relatability, the ability to be vulnerable. And so I like to think from my pretentious pedestal that the empath provides that to the world. I try to be as open-minded as I can in every aspect, in terms of, and this is going to sound again quite strange, if somebody comes and shares something dark of them, I'm going to relate to, you know what, I have dark parts of me. How can I condemn somebody because their sins are different than mine? That's really what it comes down to. And I like to believe that the energy of the empath invites people to pour out. And sometimes, I will say this, sometimes it is a burden because I'm not having that kind of day where I can provide space for you. But here you are, we're sitting on a plane for 8 hours out, and you're going to dump on me for the 8 hours. and it happens. And it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's like these, you sit next to someone on the plane and we get talking, and then sometimes it's enjoyable and 5 hours has passed and then you're at the destination. And I mean, that's happened to us before when we're coming back from Costa Rica. Like these random coincidences aren't so random after all, and it's interesting when the divine does sit you down next to someone and how powerful synchronicities. So let's go into synchronicities. What are some major synchronicities happening in your life to get you to where you have gotten to now? I mean, tell us a little bit about your childhood story and what created this path for you.
I'll talk about my childhood, but before I want to talk about one defining moment of synchronicity, because it was for me a life changer. It went from being completely broke, struggling in New York, to running away with Cirque du Soleil as an acrobat. And I'll give you the very condensed version. I'm struggling in New York. Nobody will hire me. And a friend of mine says, there's this French company, they're looking for acrobats, and she couldn't pronounce the name of this company. And I'm thinking, like, this is stupid. Why? I didn't come to America to run away with a circus, wear big shoes, and roommate with a bearded lady. That's not why I came to America. That next morning, I woke up earlier than normal, and I thought, you know what? Let me go to this stupid Circus du Soleil, whatever they call it. Let me go to this audition. I go to the audition. I can't find the entrance to the big top tent. And I literally sneak in through a canopy slit, and I'm reversing into the canopy, and it's like a cartoon character where I bump into the casting lady with my bum, almost literally. That moment changed everything for me because they ended up hiring me. After the audition, I turned them down because I didn't know who they were. Talk about naivete, but that was synchronicity. I was meant to be at that audition on that day at that time. And it changed the world for me. And that for me has been a defining moment to try and pay attention to those moments of synchronicity. They're around us all the time, and we ignore them. Now going back to my childhood very quickly.
So tell us, Vital, what happened after that with the circus? You went with the circus. Share the story. I'm like, wait.
I did the audition, and they are absolutely insane. And when I mean insane, I mean on a genius level of creativity. And I'd been used to being around, New York City ballet dancers, Alvin Ailey, very refined, methodical, pragmatic dancers with technique. And then I arrive at this circus, and they're asking me to make these weird swooshing sounds and show me what an apple feels like, and how does a potato dance, and what is smiling seaweed. And I'm thinking, this is absolutely silly. And I showed them, this is the other part of the learning, I showed them a very authentic Vital. I didn't care. Going back to woo-woo, I was not connected to the outcome. I just went in there and I said, you know what? I'm not a Canadian Olympic gymnast. I'm not a German acrobat. I'm some guy from a small town in Belgium, and this is me. And whatever that is that comes out, that's who I am. And they loved it because they were looking for authenticity. We're all wearing masks, afraid to show who we are, and the world is desperate to see who each one of us is, and we hide it. Fear of judgment.
Got chills.
That one a bit deep, isn't it? That one deep. I'm so sorry.
It's so true though. Like we are all trying to be something that we're not. this programming and these social media, these constructs the Matrix has, is just adding more and more to it in the generation. So it's like it's really nice to hear that story, because I think a lot of our viewers, you know, you don't know where that's going to take you. And if you just become your true authentic self, the divine will pick you up and take you to where you need to actually be, because you're in balance, right? You're in order.
Yeah. I've now become a firm believer in authenticity, the divine, God, the universe, the source, whatever, you know, whatever you honor and respect, connect with it, because it's there to help us.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you know you were doing that at the time, though, when you were doing when you're doing the audition? Was that the intention, or is it now the wisdom of you in hindsight? Because I've got, like you, I've got things where I go, oh, wow, that was a defining moment and this was a defining moment. But at the time, I was just scared and desperate. You know what I mean? I was like doing something, but I backed myself, and holy heck, out of nowhere, I manifested this thing. And I was like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. And it's like, now I can go, oh, right. I had to back myself because I had an underlying false belief of not good enough. So I need to get to a point where I stretched myself in desperation, and then it worked, right? But now I see the lesson, but I didn't at the time.
So to your point, that's exactly what happened. I didn't feel that I was worthy of being there. And a part of me said, you've got nothing to lose. This is silly. You shouldn't be here. Just go out. If you're gonna fail, fail spectacularly. And I just made that decision in an instant. You can talk about Eckhart Tolle, the power of now. I just decided I'm here in this moment, and this is it. And it's only, to your point, weeks later, years later maybe, that I look back and understood, because people would ask me, how did you get into Cirque du Soleil? And I really didn't know, because I wasn't a gymnast. I wasn't an Olympic gymnast. And it went back to this one moment where I didn't care. That's what got me into the company. It wasn't my dance technique. It was nothing other than being in the moment. Going back to your reference there, Roxanne, being in the moment, leaning into divine destiny, whatever that was. I trusted the process. I stepped away. I let go.
Mm. And you let go of any outcome. You know, you're just on a fun experience, and it turned out amazing. And that's what we're meant to play. We're not meant to know what cherry is at the end of the, you know, the line, or gold treasure chest. It's just like, just play and be surprised. And that's one thing that, yeah, I've undone over this awakening, is like, enjoy the surprise, because I never used to like magic tricks and not knowing. And so, you know, breaking this down and undoing it, it's like enjoying the reward when you don't know what the reward could be. That's really what we wake up to every day, is like, okay, what amazing spectacular events could happen today, because it could happen. Anything could happen, you know, on this journey. And I think that's what keeps us all so invigorated in this whole journey of spiritual awakening, because it's very exciting.
It is very exciting. And another thing that you tapped into that I also want to quickly add in, because it is a very spiritual thing that we don't view it that way. You talked about being playful. The power of the child. I don't mean the wounded inner child, but just the authenticity of the inner child. If you now want to get a bit scientific and woo-woo again, when you are connected to your inner child, the purest version of you, the brain is in theta state, which is the same state as the imagination and meditation. That's when you're in alignment, when your inner child is free to be itself. In that audition, I allowed my inner child to be free. If you want to connect with your true self, find your inner child. That's your true alignment.
Love it.
And it's fun, and it's silly, and it's liberating.
Yeah.
And so many people lose their inner child as they go through life, either by some sort of pain or trauma or specific event, or through constant programming, being told by their parents to, you know, shush up. Kids are to be seen and not heard. Be quiet, get in that room, you kids. Or not, you know, not being allowed to speak. Or they're intuitive, they're creative, They may even be connected and they see elves and fairies in the garden, or they have very vivid dreams and they try to speak to their parents about them and they get scolded or told that they're silly or stupid or it's demonic or evil or whatever it is. So the child shuts down their creativity. They shut themselves off from their inner child. And sometimes as adults, they try to achieve so much to feel whole and complete again because something's missing, right? They've lost a part of themselves. And the bigger car, the shiny thing, the house, the job title on the wall, etc., etc. Like some people are fulfilled success-wise in one instance in the outer world, but on their inner world, something is missing. Do you feel like that connection to that inner child once again helps to make people fulfilled and more happy?
Absolutely, because to your point about our natural gifts, the inner child is your superpower. It's who you're meant to be. Like if you think back, what did you dream of when you were like 5 or 6 or 7? Those dreams at that age is kind of what you were supposed to be. And to your point, there's a study from Gallup. Children hear on average 232 no's or negative comments a day. And every day, the adult world chips away at your inner genius. To your point, don't do that, don't touch that. And so we lose connection with who we're supposed to be. Right. So again, the inner child is the superpower. And I think there's a quote by Pablo Picasso. He says something like, it took me 9 years to learn to paint like Raphael, but it took me a lifetime to paint like Pablo Picasso.
Right.
So in anything that you want to achieve in life, just go to the source. You are the source of your own genius. Stop trying to be like the neighbors. Stop trying to be like other people. It's so clear. Be you.
Yeah.
There's only one you, and the world needs you.
So how then do you look at things like the spiritual ego, which is a cunning little one, right? where people start to go on this path of self-healing, right? And working on themselves. And unbeknownst to them, they smell of spiritual ego. They're actually, do you get what I mean?
It's like commissioner's breath.
Ooh, that's a really delicate one to answer. So there is a level of pretentiousness, arrogance when it comes to people who are woke, enlightened, whatever that word is you want to fill in. And so I think a part of true growth is humility. And I fall into this category too. There are moments when I think, you know what, your podcast is called Elevated Conversations, right? So part of me thinks like, yeah, I'm an elevated human being, which means my ego is telling me, yeah, you think you're better than other people. And then the part of me is like, yeah, you are. And then the other voice is like, no, you're not. You're just different. And so it is very dangerous. The more, I love quotes, Socrates, this is what keeps me humble. Socrates, some guy called Socrates, you might have heard of him. The more I know, the more I realize I know nothing. So as we become elevated, we're never there. We're always growing. So you should never think you're better than anybody else because the path never ends. That's how I try and minimize my, how did you phrase it? Spiritual ego. I try. I fail. I'm a human, but I try.
And the other thing, well, I love quotes too. I love the quote, what you are speaks so loudly, people can't hear what you're saying.
Wow.
So your authenticity comes through, right? That we talked about earlier in being let's call it a spiritual being. You don't need to say, oh, I've been to the caves of the Himalayas and stood on my head and, been on a 40-day water fast or whatever the heck, these people, you still eat fish, oh, whatever, right? It's like far out, So the other thing which I think is beautiful from the Bible is by their works you shall know them.
Yes.
Right? By your energy. So what you are speaks so loudly. By their works you shall know them. So what are they talking about there? Well, I think it's the energy and the emotion of someone who is non-judgmental, not thinking you're better than anyone else, very content within themselves is the observer, and they're like able to go within, see that in the past they probably wore a facade like we all do, wore a mask, played a role, you've had some damage, you've some hurt, and you realize you'll probably have it again in the future, right? It's not all going to be rainbows and sunshine because our soul doesn't learn from that. However, the more authentic we can be, the more joyful, childlike, and bring that back in our day-to-day life. That is actually, because sometimes people say, I feel like I'm here for some sort of a mission, right? And they think they've got to start up a healing retreat or something. And I think really all you've got to do is be authentic, be nice, shine your light. That's going a long way to what your mission is. Have you experienced that, or would you agree?
I totally agree. Don't talk about the mission. You need to embody the mission with everything that you do. Actions speak louder than words. There are so many cliches to validate what you just said because it's so spot on. Going back to authenticity, I recently shared something that I learned that blew me away. In terms of vibration and high frequency, we often talk about love is the vibration of the universe and it's the highest frequency. According to this theory, this woo-woo, this very woo-woo theory, the highest frequency is not love. The highest frequency is authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. If you are living authentically, it means, I don't necessarily like the term self-love, but it means you are in pure vibrational alignment with the self, with the universe, with everything, because you are being true, you are being honest, you have integrity. All those beautiful things actually encompass love. And so authenticity, getting into the law of attraction, if you show up being authentic, that vibration is going to attract what is supposed to be yours. What is supposed to be yours, so to speak.
Yeah. And on the scale of consciousness, you start to move into, well, you've moved past the level of the heart, which calibrates at 500 on the scale of consciousness. Yeah. So you've got a green ray auric field. You're loving, you're empathetic. People like are attracted to you. Remember, by their works you shall know them. Next on the scale of consciousness is joy, between the heart and authenticity. So there's the inner child coming out, playful, enthusiasm, energy in motion through the emotion of us, and authenticity being up there. So when we move from service to self into service to others as a soul, we're said to have graduated in this lifetime. It's like we've cracked the video game. The thing to come into is realize this life's not all about me, right? It's about how, if I can find my lost self again, we could start with the inner child, or the me that was sitting here reading that soul contract before you went in the embryo going, there's a fair bit of fine print here. I mean, I don't know if I want to go back in here and feel all this shit, you know? I think it's going to be tough, right? If you can work through all of that, that's where they say our soul is said to have graduated through the different levels of consciousness. So when people are talking about 3D to 5D and all these crazy concepts, you could break it down about being a nice guy or a nice girl, being a legend, being authentic, right? Giving that energy out. And people make it often too complicated. Would you agree?
I do. Like, life can be, should be very simple. And I love how you phrased it about being of service. I subscribe to that philosophy of we're here to give and share, which is why I don't know what your take is on the term self-love. I know the intention behind the term self-love. I find it dangerous because it invites emotional masturbation, in the sense that if I make it about me, I validate it, I can make it about me. That turns easily into selfishness. Not always, but oftentimes. But if you are of service, the intention, the focus is always, how can I bring value to others? And I love how you phrase that, because for me, that is part of the mission, or the calling of the empath, is to be of service. Because I feel your pain, I want to hold space for you. I want to bring value to you. I want to validate your existence. There's actually a Zulu expression called sawubona, and it simply translates to I see you. So if I acknowledge your presence, it means that I'm there for you. I'm making it about you. That's the service to humanity. So bona. It's a beautiful thing.
Beautiful.
It's so funny fine-tuning all of the instruments of our souls, like, self-care into selfishness. And I mean, there's a fine line, and sometimes we can get caught up in, am I doing it right? Am I overstepping the mark here? And it can be very complicated, this whole journey, as to not to be flexing the ego in a way of perspective and then stepping over into selfishness. I mean, it can be very, very complicated as you travel through all of these concepts.
It's hard sometimes. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But again, I think if you live in alignment with, I think, what humanity, not just humanity, but consciousness, existence, the animal kingdom, they don't inflict pain out of pleasure. Everything that they do is simple. It's survival. It's either I need to eat to survive, I live in harmony with nature, with the universe, and humans, going back to making it too complicated, we've overcomplicated everything. It's simply, we're here to live in harmony. And if we just focused on that simple fact, harmony, all the other complications of our existence, I think, would fade away. That's my romantic utopian notion.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and the mind, everyone is in their head. A lot of the planet, the people are in their head. And that's why it's becoming so much more complex because it's like all of our brains, our heads are, getting bigger with all of these thought forms and beliefs and conditioning. And don't just say that because you might be selfish or all this stuff, and it just goes to show that the animals, and like what you were saying, they're just coming from the heart, and it's just very simple living. And the heart is simple. It's not complicated in the head. We're not overthinking constantly. And we love the levels of the brain, getting that concept into alpha level and then the gamma level. What's your experience with connecting to interdimensional beings or higher frequency beings, archangels? Have you had any visitations?
It's that's not an easy one to answer because it's not a realm that I fully understand. I'm learning and growing daily, and I've had some experiences, but I can't say, oh, that's what it is. But I've had the out-of-body experiences where what's the astral traveling during a dream?
Yes.
Where I'm asleep, but I'm awake and I can't explain it. So maybe this is it. I've had moments of, and it could be just through pure heightened adrenaline, where one example in Cirque du Soleil, I was doing an aerial act and I was falling down to the ground, and I'm thinking, because my harness was detached, and I'm thinking, this is it. This was my final moment. And those final seconds were in such slow motion. I was literally able to look down in the audience like, oh my God, what a beautiful purse that lady has. Oh, they match her shoes. Everything just slowed down to this fifth dimensional, whatever term you want to fill in. And that was something that I don't know how or why, and I don't know how to explain it. So if that's what that is, then yes, I've had these experiences that don't make sense on this plane.
Well,
and I'm having more and more.
And isn't it exciting to learn about the other radio stations and the other dimensions? It's like, it's this journey is so nice to learn and constantly expand once you get on the road, the path of enlightenment, and stop getting the roadblocks in front of us.
But as much as I don't know, I'm receptive to it. I'm curious about it. I'm wanting to learn more about it because I think it is an inevitable part of our evolution. There's so little that we know.
Yeah, I love
Let's
it.
dig deeper into the human condition because there's so much more out there that we can't even imagine. But let's not say that it doesn't exist because we can't imagine it. So I'm open to all the levels that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and yes.
And of course, not just imagine it, but just pick up on it through our devices that we use to pick up on what's going on around us. Like, we forget our eye can only pick up between the vibration of red and violet. There's all sorts of vibrations faster than violet, ultraviolet, A, B, C. There's infrared, lower than the vibration of red. We can't see. We know it exists. We hear 20 to 20,000, 20 to say 20,000 hertz, but a dog whistle lets off a high-pitched noise above 20,000. We can't hear it, but the dog's got a more sensitive ear. They pick up on it and hear it. So we're getting these narrow little bits. So when someone says, if I can't see it or if I can't believe it, it doesn't exist. It couldn't be real. I mean, really, our instruments are what we're using to pick up on all of that. So that's quite a narrow-minded way of looking at life. So we kind of got to remember ourselves as our vibration goes up, though, we pick up on more, like your intuition improves and others. Yeah.
I'm laughing because you said dog whistle and you said dogs.
And there's your dog.
My joy. They literally, as you said it, they literally came into the room and started saying, like, we heard dog talk. So yeah.
They're picking up on the good vibes.
Yeah, definitely picking up on the good vibes.
Vital, please share with us all. Like, everyone would be loving this conversation. Why is pink the color of empathy?
Finally, we got there. Finally. So going back to vibrations and energy of colors, there are several layers to the color pink. It's not as intense as red, right? So the subliminal message about pink is empathy is viewed as this soft, weak human trait. You're empathetic, you're soft. Pink is a bit softer than red, but red is this passionate, intense color. So there's that in the color pink. On a vibrational frequency, pink has been gravitated and associated with the sacred feminine energy. It's a feminine color. So empathy, the caring, nurturing trait, is a feminine trait. So in some ways, I'm promoting men to be men, but to connect and embrace the feminine side of you, because I think a strong, healthy, confident man is a warrior, he's a hero, but he protects and cares for the people that are vulnerable and for the people that he loves. So there's that yin-yang balance. So that's part of the pink color. The other part of pink is that psychologically, it's a color that pacifies. And they've done strange experiments in prisons using the color pink on prison walls. And what they found is that inmates became less aggressive. But it had to be the right shade of pink. If it was the wrong shade of pink, the inmates would become more aggressive. They've also used a strategy in sports where they've painted the opponent's away dressing room pink because it softens them. So really the message is about a soft, nurturing, caring energy, but don't mess with me because there's some red in this color. And if I have to, the gloves are on, and I will get medieval with you because I can be kind and gentle, but I can be firm.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Thank you. But that's the big misconcept of empathy. It's viewed as a weakness. FBI uses empathy during interrogations. It's not a weakness.
No.
And so I wear the pink as a statement that I'm a man in all the traditional concepts of a man, but I'm in touch with my feminine energy, and I try to combine the two to optimize my humanness. So that was the short version.
Beautiful.
And that color that you've got on right now is the color that you perceive it, that essence of. Is that right? Yeah.
That is. Are you feeling very peaceful and soft and gentle
but strong?
There you go. So yes, I make the statement of pink, and then also just in terms of pure branding, I'm going to show the sort of more logical side. I realized that as a man wearing pink and making this pink statement, it was sticky. People remembered it. And if people can remember your messaging, you have a platform to make it an impact. If people can't remember your messaging, so it was strategic, it was organic, it was spiritual, it was scientific, it was all of those things combined.
Makes so much sense.
And that's why KFC has bright red, McDonald's has bright red, Burger King bright red, Coca-Cola bright red, Kit Kat chocolate bar bright red. Quick fix, you're hungry, fast food, boom, in and out. But you wouldn't want to choose a lawyer that probably had a bright red logo.
as I'm sure you're aware, colors have an energy. They communicate on a subconscious level, either trustworthy. Purple is royalty. You know, they all have these energetic messages, and so
Yes.
pink ended up for me being the right color to promote empathy.
Yeah, that's beautiful answer too, because I feel like the world is in its masculine. I know you gave the example of men. There's a lot of women who are in their masculine. They've got to be the warrior. They've got to fend for themselves because they've never had a man to have their back and they've moved into their masculine. And, you know, a lot of us turn into warrior men or warrior women going out there, making it through the world because underneath, right, we feel like no one's ever had our back or everyone's let us down. There's a lot of disappointment. So I'm going to make it happen myself, right?
Yes.
And we could go sacral chakra wound, where it's like I'm incomplete within myself. I will make myself feel better by going out there and doing things and making things happen. So bringing in this vibration of the color pink and letting people know that it's actually attractive to be sensitive and understanding. And there's a lot of wisdom to being able to slow down and actually listen rather than needing to butt in and force your opinion or have the last say or whatever it may be. A lot of those feminine qualities people are trying to integrate now because we spoke at the beginning about triggers or observations. A lot of the masculine energy is being exposed now for what it is: pushy, underhanded, false. You know, you can't trust the politicians, you can't trust big media, big business, right? People are starting to realize they're all in together. They're selling us these stories, and people are like, wow, I'm not quite sure who to trust anymore. Right. And then, of course, some people who've got control issues don't like that. They're like, I just wanted to tell me what to do and what to think and whatever. And then what happens is people like yourself come through presenting this wisdom. And have you found more and more people seem to be open to your information now? Like, have you noticed in the last few years, a lot more people go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. And in the back of your head, you're thinking, I never thought they'd be into this. But like, have you noticed this awakening that is what I want to get to?
Absolutely. And my sort of awakening happened during COVID. And I think for COVID, a lot of things changed for a lot of people. A lot of people went internally and went inward. And so for me, especially this last year, it's been quite surprising on my Instagram page, the amount of celebrities who are now gravitating towards the message. I'm like, oh my God, you relate to like Alanis Morissette, liked and followed me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this celebrity who is up there on this pedestal is a sensitive soul, understands, wow, it's bigger than I could have possibly imagined. And I'm getting, this is the downside of it though. As the message gets to a broader audience and people are embracing it more, at the flip side of the coin, there are more people fighting it. So I'm getting a lot more acceptance, a lot more understanding, a lot more acceptability, but I'm also getting those who are holding on to, I'm going to say, the old regime, who are like, oh, this empathy bullshit, this is not good, this is, so I've got to take both into account, but it is very refreshing, especially men. When I see men who are receptive to the message, that's when I feel good, because again, for me, the toxicity, both feminine and masculine, I think empathy is a neutralizer. So it's very fulfilling when I see these, you know, stoic, tough men understand the power of vulnerability.
Yeah, and that relates exactly right back to the fact that the ones who might go, and I know we don't like to use the word triggered in this conversation, but the ones who get triggered by that, right, they've probably got a heart wall up because they've been let down, disappointed, their little heart or soul got trampled on when they were a kid, and then they might have got brought up in a family where the father said, you know, don't cry about it, crying's not going to fix it, or in and around friends who say, just harden up, just get on with it, is what they say in Australia. Just harden up. Or the other good one, have a cup of concrete, harden up, get
Oh,
on.
I've never heard that one before.
Imagine saying that to someone who's going through something difficult. So no wonder there's a mental health epidemic. where people can't speak about their feelings. They can't speak about their depression or their upset or their loneliness, right? There can be conditioning out there. So like, I really want to thank you for the work that you're doing in helping soften people up to letting their heart wall down. Because as you know, the heart wall doesn't just keep out the bad stuff, it keeps out the good stuff too. So the person has trouble ever really feeling loved or special or appreciated. You know, if you've ever been around someone and they get a compliment and they can't handle it, they go, oh, no, no, no. No, you look really good in that color. Oh, no, no, it's just the only shirt I had left. Yeah, no, no. You know, it's like they can't handle it. They get almost upset or triggered by, and I would say, let's explore that. Maybe we should be archaeologists.
By the way, I'm not triggered by the word trigger. It's a word. I was just raising an awareness that if it's a generalization across the board, it can, but the word trigger, more importantly,
I'm playing around.
I'm playing right back. Go drink a cup of concrete, mate. There you go.
Yeah, good.
Something you touched on here at the very end that I just want to quickly address. You brought it up and it's very poignant to my messaging: mental health. I don't promote empathy as just this romantic, all love, let's come together and kumbaya. It's much deeper than that. I think the world is experiencing a mental health pandemic as you experienced it. In particular for men who have been programmed to not show their feelings, to suck it up, to drink that glass of concrete, that cup of concrete, and it's become so detrimental. And if we can just have more empathy, that invites people, going back to the beginning of the conversation where people will just come and talk to me and dump. Imagine if everybody felt the freedom, the confidence to be able to share their darknesses. We would minimize loneliness. We would minimize addiction, because we're all trying to soothe our hurt souls. We're afraid of judgment. So what do? We do it in privacy. We do it in secret. We do it with shame, and we do it with guilt. If I know that I can reach out to you and share my dark moment and you're not going to judge me, you're just going to hold space for me, that elevates my sense of self-esteem. It inspires a level of hope. Mm-hmm. And really, that's the core of the book.
That's beautiful.
The modern pandemic.
That was my next question for you. What's your latest book about? Where can people find that? And of course, your socials.
So this is the book. Pink is the color of empathy. It's the 7th book that I've written. It's the proudest book, the most poignant book that I've ever written. And strangely enough, it's the book I almost deleted because I talk about my darknesses. I want to help people come out of their darknesses. And so I share a small part of my journey. And through my shame and my guilt, I almost didn't publish it out of fear. Mm-hmm. It ends up being my most soul book, the book that touches the hearts and souls of the people that I could have not imagined. So it was worth it. And then other books include this one about creativity, The Inner Child. On social media, they can find me at the Sigma Empath.
Wonderful.
Or my website, vitalgermaine.com. I want to say, guys, I love what you guys stand for. I love the work that you're doing. I love the energy that you show up. You've invited me to be me. You've made me feel very comfortable and very confident. So hats off to you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right back at you. You're a beautiful soul. Very nice conversation. It's been a long conversation, but we've really enjoyed it.